Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to Growing Through It, a podcast dedicated to bringing you clarity so that you can harness your curiosity and be the creator of your life. Hosted by me, Shanae Rowe. Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. This one's all about comfort zones, discomfort, and their role in our growth. So I'm going to be talking about why we need to get uncomfortable in order to grow and evolve. And then I'm also going to touch on some of the common feelings that we get when we're outside of our comfort zones. So firstly, I think to understand discomfort, I think it's important to understand familiarity and why we crave familiar things, so situations and people and experiences. So there's a couple reasons, and the first one, I guess it's that familiarity makes processing information a lot easier. It reduces our effort to interpret information if that info is not entirely new. So think environment, perspectives, people. If you're living in the same hometown that you've been in your whole life, it's probably a lot easier for you to predict what's going to happen. You probably have a similar friend group. You might even be living with your parents still. And so everything's probably pretty predictable. You know exactly when to call your friends because you know basically their whole work schedule and when they're going to be off. You know what your parents are up to, what your friends are up to, maybe even what your siblings are up to if you still live at home. So yeah, it makes processing information so much easier. You're kind of in autopilot. You don't really have to think. You just do. You just act. And there's not a whole lot of thinking involved because your brain knows what to expect. And then another reason why our brains really like familiar things is because it provides cognitive ease. So think about if you're kind of acting in autopilot, if you're in an environment that you know that you're comfortable in, your brain then is able to signal like this is known as safe so you can relax. And I think it is important to have safety, but it doesn't contribute to our own personal development when we're not exposing ourselves to new situations and experiences. So yeah, basically familiarity is our comfort zone. They kind of go hand in hand. And if we're not trying anything new, we're sort of just recycling all of our current ideas and beliefs and perspectives and knowledge. So if you're living in your hometown, for example, you're kind of just re-exposing yourself to people that maybe have the same ideas as you and beliefs as you. So you're not opening your eyes to other ideas, other perspectives, other ways of living that other ways of living that exist, but you actually have no idea about because you haven't been exposed to it. And I think it's really important to note that if you aren't being exposed to other people's experiences, so if people aren't telling you stories about what they've achieved in their life and all this stuff, then you're actually not going to know that that reality exists. And if you don't know that there's a possibility of another way of living that's not your way, then you're probably not going to have much drive to go and do new things. But at the end of the day, trying new things, doing stuff that we haven't done before, but we kind of want to do or maybe are excited to do, that's how we grow. That's how we evolve. That's how we meet people and develop our skill sets. That's how we develop our ability to communicate with people, to empathize with people's experiences. And so basically, our brains really, really love familiar things. It really loves our comfort zone because it's easy and it feels safe and it feels known to us. So what happens when we're doing something that isn't known to us? What happens when we do venture out into a whole new world that is outside of our comfort zone? And what feelings come up when we do this? So I think to be continuously evolving and developing, we need to be spending a big chunk of our time outside of our comfort zones. But as I'm sure many of you know, discomfort brings with it a roller coaster of emotions. So you have the initial excitement when you're super keen to be doing something that you haven't done before, whether that's travel or moving out of home. You're super excited for a new lifestyle that you're going to live and you don't know what to expect, but you're really hopeful and eager to get out there and give it a go. So once that sort of passes, then the anxiety and the nerves kick in. So you start overthinking maybe about taking the leap. All these what ifs come into play. You're sort of dipping your toe outside of your comfort zone and the excitement has worn off and you're like, "Oh, okay, so this is real. I actually don't know how to navigate this." And a lot of nerves are sinking in for you because you're like, "Wow, this is real. This is going to happen." After that phase, it's probably when you experience a little bit of fear, maybe where you're feeling unsafe in this new environment because, again, you haven't been there before. You don't know what's going to happen. So you might be on edge a little bit. You might feel uncomfortable, of course. And yeah, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what's happening. And because of that, your brain feels a little bit unsafe. And as well as all this fear, it's pretty common to feel a lot of self doubt about yourself, about the decision that you've made. A lot of the initial excitement maybe has worn off, and you're sort of in this mindset of what have I done? What's going on? I don't really know what I'm doing. Am I even capable of moving through this situation? And I think a good example for me from my experience is when I first bought my van. When I was organizing buying it, I was beyond excited. I was over the moon. I couldn't believe that this was about to become my reality. Like, I'd wanted to live in a van for so long, for years, and it was now starting to happen. And I just couldn't believe it. I was imagining what my life would look like, the adventures I would go on. I was imagining waking up on the beach and opening up my van and just sitting in bed, drinking my coffee, just like watching the world go by. So I was making up all these scenarios because I was really excited and eager to do this new thing. And of course, there were times when I thought it's going to be hard. Like, there are going to be things that come up that are probably going to challenge me and it's going to be hard to move through. But I was excited nonetheless. I knew that I had the ability to go through hard things. I knew that I'd have my back and I'd be able to navigate whatever life threw at me when I was traveling by myself. And I'm really glad that I had this confidence in myself at the start because I think that is also what made me excited. I was excited to see my potential and what I could achieve on my own. And that really helped me to take the leap and to step outside of my comfort zone and try something new. So yeah, after I did pick up my van in Tasmania, I was just overjoyed. I was crying tears of gratitude because I couldn't believe that this had now become my reality. And so the excitement, it was still there, but that enthusiasm and that eagerness that I had, it didn't last and it doesn't last. Like, one thing I found is don't expect to be super excited about something for a long time. Like, don't expect to just always be excited and pumped about a decision that you've made because the process is like that will fade. And for me, it certainly did, especially in the first week. It turned into a lot of nerves. I was asking all these what if questions like, what if my van breaks down? What if I get lost? What if I don't meet people? What if I don't get a job? What if I can't find work? All of these things where I was just questioning my decision because all the joy and the giddiness that I felt had fizzled out and reality had set in, and it was like, this is my life now. All of these things could potentially go wrong because I don't know what I'm doing and I'm in a situation that I've never been in before. And so our minds tend to overthink everything when we're trying something new because there are a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things that are happening that we don't know how to deal with. So yeah, for me, it was a lot of what ifs. What is going to happen if this happens? Am I going to be okay? Probably not, because my mind was really overanalyzing everything and overthinking. And that is what tends to happen when you're in that first phase of getting outside of your comfort zone, dipping your toes into the uncertainty and into all that uncomfortable stuff. So, yeah, after that, it was a lot of fear that came. I felt really unsafe in my own body, and not because physically I felt unsafe, but my brain was sending all of these signals to me that it was alerting me like beep, 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 we do not know what is going on. And like I didn't know how to navigate this new life that I had just jumped right into. And because I had this fear of the unknown, which is completely normal, like when we're trying something new, when we're getting outside of our comfort zone and into our growth zone, we are gonna be scared of what's to come because we don't know. We have no idea what to expect. We can't predict anything. Our brain is trying to grasp onto things that feels familiar, and there's just nothing there. And within all of that, I had a lot of self-doubt about what I was doing. I started doubting myself and what I'm capable of doing. So that initial excitement had all completely worn off. Like was not I was not jumping with joy anymore. I was very much thinking, what am I doing? What have I done? Why have I done this to myself? Because I was so uncomfortable, like searching for campsites to sleep at night, free camps, because I didn't want to spend any money, because who wants to do that? It was all new to me. Like, yeah, it's easy enough to just like tell someone to use an app, which Wikicamps is probably the best app you could use. But for so long, like I didn't know how to use the app. So even looking for a place to sleep at night stressed me out because I'd never done something like that before. And a big thing that came up for me that had to do with self doubt was just me questioning if I was even able to do this by myself. Like, I was pushed so far outside of my comfort zone that I legitimately questioned if I had the capacity to live in a van and to travel Australia by myself, because I'd never done it before. I'd gone on camping trips and stuff as a kid, but nothing to the extent of living sort of longish term. I've never been outside the country, so I had no overseas travel to sort of relate to. I'd moved out of home previously, so I had an understanding of what it took to be self sufficient, to be independent, how to move through experiences that were new to me. So I had a little bit of that behind me. But living on the road in a van all by myself, not knowing anyone and not having a support network with me, it was incredibly challenging. And it probably didn't help that I didn't really have a plan. Looking back in hindsight, it probably would have been better to have an idea of where I was going, but I sort of just took off in my van with the intent that I'd just flow with it. I'd just go wherever my heart took me. Which looking back, it probably made things even more uncomfortable because I had nothing to hold on to, no routine, no real place to be, and it just made that uncertainty even more prominent. So, yeah, that was kind of like the journey of stepping outside of my comfort zone when I bought my van, sort of what happened, what emotions I felt. And I really want to let you guys know that, like, you don't stay in that state of anxiety and fear and self doubt for too long. I mean, if you are doing something super challenging, you might be looping through all those stages for a while until you start to find your feet. But eventually, you will start to get comfortable in this new environment and this new lifestyle that you've created for yourself, because that will start to feel familiar to you. And I actually just want to note that for me, I have found that when I'm trying new things, when I'm stepping really far outside of my comfort zone into the depths of the ocean, I do get this feeling that I want to go home. And I say that very loosely because home hasn't always meant like back to my hometown where I grew up. For me personally, home tends to mean something easier. So when I first moved out of home, that whole process was completely new to me and it felt really uncomfortable. I was very much in the growth zone and I really wanted to go back home to my hometown. I considered like what my life would look like. I was really considering what my life would be like if I turned around and if I went back home and lived with my parents, like what I would do for work, who I would be and evolve into if I did go back home. But I pushed through that and I'm so glad that I did because once I was out the other side, I had found a new version of myself. I had experienced navigating a whole new experience of moving out of home. And yeah, I got to understand who I was and the things that I wanted and the things that made me happy. All because I exposed myself to a new environment and I let myself feel all the icky emotions that came with getting outside my comfort zone. So I do believe that when we are in really uncomfortable and unfamiliar places in our lives, we do crave the familiar. Our brain makes us remember a time in our lives that was easier, but the whole reason that our brain is craving going back to that familiar place is because we have already done the work to get comfortable in that uncomfortable environment. So I think it's all about learning tools and practices to help us navigate the icky feelings so that we can move through the excitement, the anxiety, the fear, the self-doubt, and we can come out the other side with this sense of peace and contentment and sense of accomplishment for trying something new, for getting outside our comfort zones, and for learning more about who we are. And not only this, but the more that you are getting outside of your comfort zone, the more skills that you're starting to pick up and learn and take on in your own life. So, like I was saying earlier, like you become a sponge when you are outside of your comfort zone. When you are in the growth zone, you are super sensitive to what's going on because your brain is trying to understand what is happening. And in doing so, it's starting to piece together things. It's starting to be more in tune with other people's emotions, with your own emotions. It's starting to understand how things work in the world, how things come together. And because of this, because you're absorbing all of this new information, you're actually building on your skill set and you're able to develop new insights and beliefs and values based on an experience that you're going through where you're being exposed to different perspectives. And I think that for me is why I love getting outside of my comfort zone so much and why I hope that other people will enjoy it just as much because you're constantly learning something about yourself. You're constantly rethinking the perspectives that you have. You're reconsidering your own ideas and beliefs because of all of this new information that's coming in from an experience that you're enduring. And I think that's really powerful and beautiful for someone to be able to have that introspection and be able to humble themselves and re-educate themselves to be constantly learning through what they're going through. So yeah, I think that getting outside of your comfort zone is the most surefire way to be continuously evolving, because going through hard things, like in the first episode, going through hard things is where you're growing, it's where you're learning, and it's where you are breaking down all the walls that you've built up so that you can create new ones that align more with who you are and the person that you want to be. So there's a few tools and practices that I like to use to help me navigate the icky feelings that come when you are outside your comfort zone and when you are trying something new. And I find them really useful to find acceptance in the discomfort because it's really important to learn how to navigate the emotions that come up when you are doing something new, because the only way is through. And if you do want to put in the work to develop as a person and to grow, then you need to expose yourself to these hard experiences and to things that you've never done before. And to help you successfully get through those challenging times, it's really important to have practices and tools in place. So, there's some personal practices that I really like to do, and they're things that I do on a personal level that help me manage the discomfort. And the first one is feeling my feelings. And I'm going to be dropping an episode on this one soon because, like I said in my previous episode as well, I do think that understanding our emotions and allowing ourselves to feel them is really important. And it's sort of the first stage of understanding what's going on within ourselves and within the world we're living in. So, yeah, just taking the time to slow down, to think about what's going on with our emotions, why we're feeling the way we are when we're exposed to something new. And as well, start paying attention to the sensations within your body when you are going through a difficult situation. So, when we're outside of our comfort zone, there are all of these emotions that are coming to the surface. So try and label what you are feeling. When we give an emotion a name, it really helps us be able to identify a solution and move forward in a healthy and clear way. Another tool that I like to use is breath work, and as well just being compassionate to myself through breathing. So when I'm feeling overwhelmed with a situation that I'm in, I really like to take a moment just to take some deep breaths. I really like to put pressure on my collarbones and rub there because it just feels really nurturing and it feels really nice. And it helps me focus on my breath as well. Also, sometimes I'll put like a hand on my chest as I breathe deeply, just so that I'm focused on my breath and I'm trying to get my mind to hone in on one thing instead of being really overwhelmed with all of this newness that's going on. So, yeah, it's really good to just try and focus on a single thing, shut your eyes, do some deep breaths, and go from there when you've sort of reset your nervous system. Another thing that I really, really love to do is movement. So, I think movement is really important when you're going through something new, when you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. Using your body is a really good way to help you clear your mind. For me personally, I really like to dance. I really like to go outside and to dance and to move my body in weird and new ways because it takes the focus off of how hard my current situation is and allows me to sink into my body and to feel all the sensations that's going on. And I think movement in the form of dance is a really good way to expel trauma and worry and uncertainty. So, yeah, there's some things that I really like to do on a personal level that really help me navigate the discomfort and the unease of stepping outside of my comfort zone. And then we've got some community practices. So, this is where you're turning to people for advice or you're talking to friends and family. So, when we're trying something new and doing something that we haven't done before, it is so important and so underrated to seek advice from people who have more experience than us. And even seeking advice from people who are doing exactly what you want to be doing. So when I was traveling in my van, I reached out to a lot of people, especially on social media and Instagram and the likes of that. I reached out to people who were living the van life, who were living on the road, and I would ask them advice on how they do it, where they find the best campsites, what their day to day looks like. So, yeah, I reached out to a lot of people just to help me navigate this lifestyle that I didn't know how to live yet. But initially, I was actually quite scared of asking people, and I think maybe because that meant admitting that I didn't know what I was doing, and maybe in some way I felt like a little bit of a failure because I thought I'd jump in the deep end and know exactly what I was doing, and I wouldn't have any doubts or fears or anything. So I think it took me a little while to reach out to people who were living the life that I wanted to live because of that sort of fear of failure and fear of not being good enough. But yeah, once I did reach out, like it was amazing. People are always there to offer support and to offer advice. Like people love sharing their stories with other people because it gives us a sense of fulfillment when we've gone through something challenging and we're able to offer advice and support to someone who's going through the same thing. So yeah, asking for advice from older people, people with more experience, or just people who you admire who are doing something that you are trying to do or see yourself doing and becoming. And as well, just having a solid support network of friends. It's so underrated. Like when you have people who you can turn to and talk about all your fears and worries and all the self-doubts and have them listen and offer advice in return. It's like one of the best ways that you're going to be able to move through a challenging time, and getting outside of your comfort zone and trying something that is completely new to you is a whole lot easier when you have a handful of really supportive friends who make you feel safe and seen and heard. So there are a couple of the things that you can do on a community level to help when you're getting outside of your comfort zone, when you're trying something new, so that you can move through it and just evolve into that new version of yourself that you will get to once you allow yourself to find some comfort within the discomfort. So, my lovelies, that is a wrap on episode 2. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you've learned something from this episode and you can take something away from it. And if you have any friends that you think would benefit from giving it a listen, please share it, pop it on your stories, send it to some friends. It would mean the world to me. But that is all from me today. The world is waiting for you, so get on out there and enjoy your big, beautiful life. Bye!